I happened to see an article about Richard Stone being raided, and he was what Trump's people during the campaign.
Yeah, and it was involved in emails that were transferred and him having knowledge with the Russians and all that collusion. The whole thing is
Whatever.
absurd.
But the point was, everybody knows who this guy is. He's a respected businessman. He's not a threat to anybody. Well, some may argue, I guess, but he gets raided by a mass amount of law enforcement, feds, and I was just like, why do they do that when you hear stories of other people who say, okay, the guy's in trouble, they made arrangements, him and his attorney made arrangements with law enforcement, he's going to turn himself in at 11 o'clock on Saturday. When you hear stuff like that on such a person who's of a higher crime, or a more physical type of crime, where there's potential there's a lot of dirtier things going on, and then you have this guy who's established through the course of decades, and they raid him. Why do they do that? I personally think it's to make it look real bad. It's political, partially, but then I'm sure there's some reasons legally why they would do it.
Well, I think my response at least put you on your heels for about half a second. I think you were expecting me to go, yeah, that's ridiculous, and then I hit you with a bunch of reasons why it would be necessary to do something like that, even in this case.
And I concur with what you told me. Go ahead.
And I mean, but I'm not going to disagree with you that has gotten out of hand, and it is. And I also said, first of all, it's a good topic because it leads to what I always bring up on here: the constantly being degraded relationship between the community and law enforcement. I think that it's scenarios like this that have people going, man, why was that really necessary? And you were just using it as a tool, right, for the establishment, instead of looking out for the citizens and being something. But so then I'm going to go into really the legal response to this, which you've got to respect in some sort of degree. And I said I do a bunch of collections work. I do a bunch of recovery and collections and asset type of things and judgment recovery. We do a lot of post judgment. So if I go and win a personal injury case, Rick wins a big judgment, right? And it's not against, let's say, an insurance company or a corporation that has a lot of money. Then Rick's going to come to me and go, okay, I got a multi-million-dollar judgment for my car wreck. Now what do I do with it, Mr. Watts? I don't know what to do with it. And I'm going to go, don't worry about that, man. Why don't you hand that document to me, and I'm going to go find this person. I'm going to find every single asset that they've got, right? And we're going to find out where they are. And then we're going to use the judicial process and investigators and repo guys and other asset recovery specialists and get you your money. And so when you think about it, from my job in the asset protection and asset recovery fields, right, are not a whole lot different than what you would be. In fact, I work with a lot of ex-police officers and ex-military people, right, in recovering. And don't forget about our investigations agency that we use. A lot of our guys were in the military and law enforcement. And so, right, we're doing the same kinds of things that they're going to do when they're doing a criminal investigation to go locate certain evidence and try to find people and witnesses to show them where they are, because they're working on kind of the same thing we are. They got a small piece of information and they're trying to find all the information. And they're trying to have context, and they'll have context. So as many connections that you can make as possible is relevant. And so why would it be necessary then when we find out where that asset is? And remember, this is a person, okay? This is a person. Why would it be necessary for me to use the element of surprise, right, before going and essentially taking everything that person's got? Well, I think it's obvious, right? If they know I'm coming, they're going to do something with those assets.
I get that, but what if they usually raid at 6 in the morning? You're still in your underwears and flip-flops, okay? You're getting ready for work or whatever. The family's home. It causes shock and awe. Why can't you say, well, we know where this guy is every time at 9 o'clock in the morning. He's at work. What's the difference between him being at work, not knowing it's coming, and say, look, we're taking you in, blah, blah, blah. We're going to secure your house, okay?
So I think another issue that we talk about here is bail a lot. If somebody's got if they've got unlimited amount of cash and resources, right, and they can go anywhere in the world, and they've got connections to people with power that can hook them up, right, in different locations, and they've got the ability to travel very easily, right, then that makes them a flight risk. in this scenario, yeah, he may be under investigation, but might not be taking it serious, right? Because it's a sealed complaint and he doesn't know what's about to come, and so they want to make sure that they can jump on his house before he knows what's going on, so that he does not flee.
I know, but if he's at work at 9 o'clock in the morning the day before, it's like he's not going nowhere, man. He's right there.
Because if it may be a sealed complaint. The feds on the federal level, they do what they call sealed complaints. And you don't even know that it's coming. All you think is you're under investigation. We don't have anything. So I did my interview and they didn't have anything, and they're not going to do anything. It's been so long. Well, that complaint may have just been sitting there, and you haven't known because it's been sealed, and they haven't told anybody. And they may be going for the warrant, but they haven't said anything about it. So he may not have thought that there was a lot to it. Okay, I don't know about this case. I didn't even see the.
We don't have to know about this case.
We don't. In this specific situation, you may be right. It may be completely absurd, but right in others.
Well, here's another example. Look at Waco. Remember Waco? They knew where Koresh was. They could have picked him up anytime they wanted to. Yet they wanted to stage a show and make it look good. And look what that happened. Then you got another case where they either raid the wrong house or somebody who's being raided, not guilty yet. Okay, raided is defending themselves because they feel that there's a threat in the home. Because I know if I'm getting raided in the middle of the night and I haven't identified who these people are and they're in my dark hallway, we got a problem. We have a problem.
And that's what I was trying to say. It's because of this. It's because of the use of these types of methods to enforce the law, so to speak, and to go and seize people and evidence. It's overuse of that type of stuff that has led to police officers getting shot because people think burglars are coming in, people thinking that this is some kind of military raid, people with PTSD or some other kind of problem waking up in the middle of the night are not going to be your most friendliest folks that you're gonna meet, okay, and then it's kind of unnecessary, right? I think that's a good word, that it's unnecessary to do the things that they're doing, and
in certain situations, which happen to be, in my opinion, maybe more of a majority of the situations. Now, granted, what you were saying in the necessities, totally get it.
And I mean, I'll be honest with you, from the civil collection standpoint, you're not going to be taking the individual to jail, and you're usually doing it during the day, and you're not going to just break down the door. It's not like a warrant case, but as far as I'm going to do everything I'm legally required to, but if I'm not required to go above and beyond to give you notice that I'm coming, I'm not going to do it, because I don't want you to squander the assets. I don't want you to recruit Confederates to help your cause when I get there. I don't want you to flee. I don't want you to take the assets with you. I don't want you to liquidate.
Isn't that a little different though than somebody owing money and you got to get their assets, as compared to this person may do hard time for supposedly doing something? The person who you're getting assets from.
But I said, I think it's offense specific. What are they accused of doing? And the circumstances are going to be different in every case. And that's why I said this part is going to inject us directly into the Fourth Amendment.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there and you had a situation like this, call me. Be anonymous. Just would like to hear the story.
And
254-697-6633.
So then we're going to start backwards, kind of from the Fourth Amendment standpoint. There's the knock and announce rule. Even when they come down on your house, right, without notice, and they're coming with that warrant to get you, right? A lot of times there was this rule under the Fourth Amendment, because remember, it's reasonableness, and when they go into your house, it's an area of privacy, and so you want to protect and maintain that privacy, and so they kind of said that they needed to knock and announce, said that they were coming before they just kicked down the door. And then too, for the safety aspect, the courts have over and time again in dealing with the knock and announce rule quoted and cited and recited the policy behind trying to keep and establish the relationship between law enforcement and the people. And it's degraded and downplayed, and it only hurts that relationship and is harmed when police just break down the door for no reason. That is more irritating, I promise you, than seeing somebody get raided. It's like, okay, you raided them, but at least you knocked on the door, let them come get their night robe on and come down and open the door. When you see them raid and then just kick down the door without knocking, that right there, in my opinion, almost always is unnecessary, unless unless they feel like, right, this is a militant group.
And I can understand that, but you got to have some type of background on it first. But here's another
and so but the Fourth Amendment, I wanted to say this, the courts have essentially made it, again, the Fourth Amendment useless, right, in the criminal context, right, for being able to do anything about the knock and announce rule. If they don't knock and announce and they come in, right, there's essentially nothing you can do to get the search thrown out. Every once in a while, you may have a civil case, right, if something goes down and they just kick down the door and guns started blazing, blasting, and people got hurt. Maybe you may have a civil case. But as far as, right,
see, that's what bugs
protecting
me.
your privacy, they've, of course, essentially, it's gone out the window.
Let's go back to Stone for a second. They raid his house. They get him early morning before he even gets out the house, and you got the family. One of the first questions he asked was, "Is my wife okay?" Why can't, if law enforcement is going to come at 6:00, why can't they wait till 6:15 when he walks out the door to go to his car? It's the same difference. 15 minutes later, he's not going to know either way. I don't understand the necessity of breaking in the house. Why can't you surround the house and wait for that individual on a certain type of situation like this, where he's not a murderer, rapist, all this kind of stuff, you know?
Their defense may be that these were electronic stuff, right? If he knew that they were out there and didn't come in, maybe there would have been a chance to delete stuff. Maybe there would have been a chance to hide stuff. There possibly could have been a chance to prepare your mind for, immediate responses to their questions. Maybe there would be a chance to prepare your story and your witnesses really quick. Hey, when they ask you this, just remember to say such and such, right? Which there may not be any time, right, for those kinds of things when they came down quickly. But again, I'm kind of like you. I don't know much about this situation, but unless there's a real reason, a need, a necessity from the government standpoint, and not mere conjecture about what the other person might do as far as their story, I don't think that they should be using these types of methods.
Okay, what about this angle on it? Let's say everything's the same, except the guys who are wearing tactical gear, M4s, the whole works, are wearing suits, have weapons tucked in their holsters, or maybe even have it at the ready, okay? But they're in unmarked cars, they got the same number of people, they're wearing their suits on an individual like this. Why do you have to do the big parade of tactical vehicles, SWAT teams, uniforms? It just, on a person like this, it just gets me. If you're
No kidding. I mean, I'm not going to shoot any slugs here, but I mean, there's been more than a handful of cases in this community where we have gotten those types of parades, and for things like traffic offenses, and I'm not lying, and it's just kind of unnecessary. And even officers later go, yeah, that was probably maybe a little overboard. But there's not really nothing you can do about it. I mean, if there's a possible civil case, especially if nobody got hurt. So it's like I'll tell you this. It's like this. I don't mind talking about Harold Weezer up there in Rosebud. He wants me to talk. We advertised about his case, and it was Clyde and I. It was the one I've talked about at least twice on here, where and the only reason I use him a lot is because he allows me to use his name. He told me, we should have wrote a magazine story on it, but and the police officers got a person stopped on the side of the road, and this goes back, it stems past history between the two, right, for 2 or 3 weeks of him, Mr. Weezer, telling everybody that the police in Rosebud have to stop stopping people outside the city limits because, it's a municipality at that time, at least, and that was illegal. They had no right to stop them outside their jurisdiction, and they're stopping all these people because it was in a construction zone where fines were double. Okay, and so he keeps telling the police officer, and finally the police officer's had enough and essentially escorts him to his car and tells him if he does that again, he's going to take him to jail. Well, Mr. Weezer sees him the next day, stop the guy in the construction zone outside the city, right? And Mr. Weezer drives by and flips him off, and goes, F you!
That's a classic. I got to take a snippet of that. F you!
And before you know it, the officer is then, right, giving the license back and chasing him down the highway, and he actually makes it into his place without a problem, and the police officer follows him down a private road, and they have an argument, and I think what won the jury over is the police officer saying, "Did you flip me off?" And Mr. Weezer said, "Yes, I did." And the officer said, "If you do that again, I'm going to arrest you for reckless driving." Well, then Mr. Weezer, after the police officer leaves, right, tells him not to do that again and proceeds to write a letter to all of the city board members telling them what happened and that he's going to come after them. Well, at 6 o'clock that morning, we had SWAT team from Falls County, Marlin, the Rosebud Police Department. I think they got some help from the sheriff and maybe even McLennan County. And they all swooped down at 6 in the morning. And Mr. Weezer's 70-something years old and his wife's 70-something years old. I mean, never been in trouble before. And they come in and with the charge of something about assault on a public servant with use of a deadly weapon. Right? And I mean,
I'm embarrassed for law enforcement. Okay.
And now this officer is actually the officer that started all this is actually in Cameron now, working at the Cameron Police Department. But right, and so I just think it was obviously not guilty. That case was obviously not guilty. That does not make people have confidence in the way that law enforcement uses its methods. And I will never back down from the facts of that case. That case was absolutely ridiculous and should have never been brought to court. I mean, it was just a citizen using his freedom of speech to tell them that they should not be breaking the law by stopping people outside the jurisdiction for the motive of money.
You know, I've said this for quite a long time, that there seems to be a wall between law enforcement and the populace that they protect. At certain points in time in recent history, that wall has been extremely high and extremely thick. And I think lately, not too long ago, many blocks have been knocked out of that wall. There's not as much tension from what I see. It's still there, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't seem to be as thick like the Missouri riots and all that kind of stuff, and then just everybody's getting tactical stuff, and it just seemed like there was this major aggression of law enforcement, and it was a total separation. But I say this because it is so vitally important that the populace respect, follow instruction, listen, obey to the laws and those who wear the badge. And I think it's extremely important, if not more so, for law enforcement to maintain their credibility, their respect to the population. There's this buffer zone in there that don't jack with the police, and police don't mess with the citizens to cause them to get riled up. Maintain a professional manner in everything we do. And overkill with SWAT teams, I don't think helps the situation at all.
Right, and those are the kinds of cases that it's just like, really? And, I mean, and as far as the Fourth Amendment is concerned, there's problems here too, right? Because our home is our castle. Mm-hmm. Right, and I think that goes into some of the problems with these kinds of rules. And just remember, on an exigent circumstances kind of case, if it's a drug case, right, they're always going to argue that destruction of evidence. They're always, well, if they see us coming, right, they're going to go throw it down the toilet, or they're gonna eat it, or they're gonna throw it down the disposal. There's going to be a way to get rid of this. And
eating it would be the most stupid way to do it, wouldn't it? Here you're taking wherever you go.
I don't know. You may like a good time. So I mean,
I'm trying to hide it, so I want to take it with me wherever I go, in the jail, in the whatever.
And so there's those exigent circumstances that may not even require them to get a warrant. And I just think just because it's a drug case, there's no reason for police to say we're not going to go get a warrant. Right? I mean, if you know what they're going to do, or it's just only, I mean, in my opinion, and the courts have started to kind of go that way because of some outrageous cases. Police will just go in and without having any other authority based on their speculation. It may be good evidence, it may be probable cause that there's drugs in the house, but they don't say what kind. They just have some idea that it's in there, and I think courts have actually a little bit backed off from just saying we'll allow you to go in without a warrant.
Do me a favor. Fourth Amendment's very big with you. Explain it in your own words as thoroughly as you can, and then explain the process, which you partially did, about how it authorizes law enforcement to go do what they have to do with a warrant. Explain that process. Everybody understands what the Fourth Amendment is, and then the procedure for going over that right, basically with a warrant.
So the Fourth Amendment is going to tell you that it protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures. And it does that to protect one's person, house, papers, and effects. Okay? Their property. Okay? Their person and their property. And so it's the keys there are unreasonable. And I said what it protects because open fields, you would think if you for instance fence in your property, right, and have your fence, and that was a trespass. In the olden days, and there's much debate. There is much debate. I could go. We don't have near enough time, especially since it's towards the end of the show. But there, you would in the olden days, you could shoot a police officer for trespassing on your property without a warrant, which was authority from the king or authority from the government to come on your property. And so, when you think about, and Scalia was a big believer in the trespass sort of thing and wanted to bring that back, and we still can use some trespass, but I don't want to say trespass because it gives the wrong idea, because you would think if your place is fenced in, right, this would be an effect, one of your effects, your property. Mm-hmm. But in fact, open fields is an exception to the Fourth Amendment, and so police officers are allowed to go in the open fields without a warrant or probable cause, something to that effect, and because it's not private, there's no privacy aspect. And so I think now that it may not be an exception to the probable cause part of it, with Scalia really pushing for a trespass, but really there's going to be no harm. You know, what are you going to argue? The thing is, there's going to be some debate, I think, come up with the trespass aspect, but the bottom line is the open field is an exception right now to the Fourth Amendment. And so we're really talking about the area that's really intimate to your home, mm-hmm. right? What we call the curtilage. Okay, and don't ask me how far it goes. It's different in every single case. It matters in every case how private that area is.
If you're in a subdivision and you have a lot that your house is on and your grass goes up to the sidewalk, would that be considered?
Probably your curtilage. But again, there's privacy aspects. Where the mailbox is doesn't end where the mailbox is, because the mailman goes there every day. Could anybody that delivers mail to your house walk right up to your front door? I would say your walkway up to your front door is maybe not your curtilage. But when you get outside right there on the bushes, maybe that's where the curtilage at least begins, or at least that's where the buffer zone is for your house. Your house, no doubt, at least at some point, has a buffer zone around it. And that's the point. The police can't go and be a peeping Tom and look through your windows, mm-hmm. and walk around your curtilage area that's really your intimate area associated with your privacy. It is your castle. No king would want another army, sitting up against the walls, twiddling their thumbs. They wouldn't appreciate that. They'd start firing immediately. The same thing with us. We don't want people who are possible enemies or people that pose threats to us, right, sitting and peeping through our windows and learning who we are. And so for our persons and papers and effects, right, that's going to protect us, and it's going to require police to have two things to be reasonable. They need two things to be reasonable: probable cause and a warrant. If they don't have one of these two things, we are going to presume that it's unreasonable. So even if they see through the window that there is dirty, some kind of dirty magazine, for instance, that you're not supposed to have under some state law, okay, if they see it through the window, do they have probable cause that at that moment you're committing a crime? Absolutely. Absolutely, they have probable cause. They have probable cause to believe that you're committing a crime. Could they arrest you? Possibly. Yeah, if you're right there where they can apprehend you, absolutely. Do they have a right to come in your house?
If they have probable cause.
If that police officer comes into your house, seizes that magazine, and places you under arrest, is that a valid seizure and a valid arrest?
I'm not 100% sure, based on how you're saying this. Whether you're seeing
you need two things to be reasonable in the Fourth Amendment. You need probable cause and a warrant.
I know, but I thought you said
we start with this analysis.
Well, then no.
It's unreasonable. We start from the standpoint of that search, that seizure, that entry, right, was unreasonable. Yes, you had probable cause, but you did not have a warrant. Okay, and so now the government, the judge is going to look at the state and go, it's unlawful. What's your excuse? And the state is going to have some delineated exceptions that we have, which is they're going to have to show hot pursuit. Judge, I saw him steal that magazine from the store, and then he ran from me, and I chased him for 3 blocks, and he tried to run and hide in his house, and that's what we call hot pursuit. That's an exception, right? And that allows police officers to break down your door immediately when you try to close it on them and stay in there because you're in hot pursuit. You had no right. When you committed a crime outside, and if you would have complied with the law, you were. So that continues as long as that pursuit continues, without regard to what obstacles you throw in the police officer's way. So it's not a house at that point. Mm-hmm. It's a mere obstacle that the police is removing from himself. It wasn't that, because the police officer on your property peeping through your window.
What if the person runs into somebody
Hold on
else?
a second. I'm gonna hit every exception with this, right? So then we go, right? Did he have exigent circumstances? Exigent circumstances, or was there an emergency? Is it destructibility? Is there evidence destructibility? Is there a threat from other people in the house that the police officer knows of? Is there anything else that would have given this police officer cause to believe that an exigency existed such that immediate breaking and entry was necessary, and that to avoid going and getting a warrant? You have no evidence in the story that I just gave you that any of that is true. All we know is he's on your property looking through your window and sees a dirty magazine that's somewhat illegal under state law. He doesn't have any evidence that you're going to take this magazine and destroy it. A magazine is not something that's readily flushable down a toilet. There's no argument.
So what's the moral of the story? Keep your windows closed, right?
No. We're going to get, and that's what I'm saying. So he did not have an exigency. There was no reason for him to jump in and think that he needed to. The house wasn't on fire. This wasn't a child, right? It wasn't people or women crying, children crying in the house. There wasn't calls from neighbors. It was simple fact that neighbors that they have guns and they're shooting at people. Okay, calls from neighbors aren't enough. It's definitely not an exigency, or everybody be getting arrested for a dispute with their neighbor. And so, he's got nothing that there's an exigency to do anything. So no, he needed to get a warrant, right there. But maybe he's going to say that you were going to destroy that magazine, and there was a fire in the backyard, and the police officer thought, like not a house in a burn ban, but let's say a fire pit, and you could have easily thrown the magazine in the fire if he did not immediately break in. That would not work, but let's just say that it works, for instance, here. The police officer still got to justify why he's within your curtilage.
This is so intense, man. There's so many things you got to know.
So let's say he gets a warrant requirement, an exception to the warrant requirement, and says there was exigent circumstances because you could have destroyed the magazine by throwing it into the fire pit or the grill that you were grilling your hot dogs, right? Then the lawyer, the defense lawyer, a good defense lawyer, would say, but I'm talking about the predicate seizure. I'm talking about the predicate search. And you say predicate search, the one that preceded, right, the going into the house. Because when you crossed this man's curtilage, it was at that point, right, that you violated the Fourth Amendment. And you did not even know that there was a barbecue going on until you looked through the window. So you did not have exigent circumstances, right, at the time that you crossed the buffer zone. And so I want to know what was the exception to the Fourth Amendment that allowed you, right, to cross into the curtilage.
Ross.
And that's important. And I think that illustrates the importance of the curtilage.
You're saying all this, and as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, I'm saying sometimes these episodes that happen, you would look at it on the outside with common sense and say, man, you know the guy was wrong. You know he was bad. Blah blah blah. But if you don't stop and defend those laws and those rights, everything gets blurred. So, and the reason I'm bringing this up is sometimes you'll look at a defense attorney thinking, why is he bringing this up? Of course he's getting paid, don't get me wrong. But there's could be a good portion of it is like, hey, I'm a defender of the law, and the law says this, and these are your rights, and these are violated, and if we don't stop it and keep it in check here...
If you think I was being overly technical, my point was this.
No, I'm not saying that.
My point was this.
In the courtroom.
If you don't have the curtilage protection, if you don't protect the curtilage, the intimate part of surrounding the home, with as much intimacy as you protect those other rights, you're going to lose that privacy. And that's because if he can simply go look in the window, right, he's going to be able to come up with any exception that he wants to make. He's going to be able to say anything. He'll be able to have. He would have already been able to see your entire private life. What if it's you and your wife on the couch, right, making intimate love that you won't want anybody else to see? No, even if you're cheating on your wife, that's nobody else's business.
I totally concur with what you're saying. I think you misunderstood what I was saying. In general, you might think this guy's a bad guy. We should be able to get him, but you can't because you're violating those things you're trying to protect.
Exactly.
So even though you may know, okay, this guy's really a scumbag, I still have to defend his rights because if we don't do it for him, somebody's going to do it to me, and you're going to lose it all.
It goes back. It goes back to the Christian burial speech case that I said that when the guy just horrendously killed that little girl, okay, and it's when and they threw it out because under the Fifth Amendment it was an invalid confession and they wouldn't have got it otherwise, and so the Supreme Court threw the case out, and when they were bashed by other judges and people in the judiciary and people in the legal community and in society in general, the judge's response was, nothing we do, nothing we write can bring that little girl back. Right? But the decisions we make today affects the advancement of society for generations to come.
That's true. It's true. Ross, we're almost out of time. Real quickly, can you please, I had a question said, can an officer ask for ID for any reason? Now, there's a couple categories. You're a licensed to carry holder, and you're just a regular Joe on the street, Joe and Jane on the street. At what reasons can an officer require it, and can a person decline if they wanted to?
If you're a license holder, do not decline to do what? Search or what?
Just the officer decides to ask for identification for whatever reason he feels it's necessary.
Just give him your ID. If you forgot your wallet at the house, I guess you need to say no. But there's a state law that says police officers can ask you for your ID. A good defense attorney is going to say, man, what was the predicate search and seizure for? When you accosted him on the street, you stopped him and you invaded his space and prevented him from going about his day, and you needed a warrant for that. You needed reasonable suspicion for that. Well, I saw him openly carrying. And we got into this. It's going to take more than 30 seconds, right? This goes back to, well, just because you see somebody driving, does that mean you get to stop them for driving a car, right? To see if they're licensed? The same argument's going to apply here. Just because you see them carrying a gun, do you get to stop them, right, to ask them for their license? The other side, the state's going to say, Judge, 80 to 90% of the people who drive vehicles are validly licensed, right? There's only 20% of the population is licensed to carry a gun.
Okay, well, the clean answer
we don't have an answer to that, whether it's legal or not. My point is, don't forget your wallet. Carry it with you if you're gonna be open carrying, right? And if a police officer asks you to see your license, don't be stupid.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Joel, we're going to do a change up on the schedule. I'm going to run him for another minute or two, and then we're going to do commercials, and then we're going to have Chief come on at 11, and then we'll do Janae after that. That's Inside Scoop you're listening to. Now, let me ask you this.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't...
No, I'm running late.
You asked the question right here at the end of the show. I mean, I'm not going to give a wrong answer here.
It's amazing is I got the power to shift things, so I want to do it.
And you're all powerful.
I got a question. Remember a month ago, a month and a half ago, I asked, and I forget what the topic was, why I brought this up. Should you pre-sterilize your home? Just the perfect case is Stone. He's getting ambushed, right? So if you think that...
That's another reason to do the raid.
And but what if you didn't do anything wrong
Now you're
yet?
supporting the raid. See, that's what I was saying. There's many reasons to do a raid based on surprise. many reasons to do it, and it's for that
Yeah, but
pre-sterilization.
you kind of had an idea it was coming.
I may steal that from you. The sterilization, right? Excuse, and I don't ever represent the government. Well, normally, maybe one. It's possible, but I don't represent the state, especially on a criminal raid. But I think that is absolutely a good excuse to sterilization standpoint. That's what we're saying. We don't want them to sterilize, right? Our reasons for bringing the case.
I'm talking about just good common sense would always be to have yourself sterilized, not humanly, but your effects. It's just the way you live your lifestyle should be one of my basic home is clean. I've got things elsewhere that I can't get. My gun's taken away.
You're talking about right. Your planning perspective. You're planning your absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely. I think that you absolutely should protect your assets from people like me. I think you should protect yourself from getting into trouble. That was my whole point, right? I hated criminal defense because it's almost like you're coming to a doctor when you've already got the cancer advanced to the nth degree. Come to me before you have these issues, right? And let's talk about how to, make yourself secure, as far as legally, from a legal standpoint, right? From an asset protection and credit standpoint, from all these things, let's work on preventative maintenance and care, and not curative, meaning.
Well, maybe down the road we'll talk about this again, but now I have to cut you short. So tell everybody, it's an awesome concept today. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, and whatever else you want to tell them.
Okay, if you guys need to get a hold of me, just come by 105 East Main Street here in Cameron. It's got the big milk cow on the side. You can't miss it. If you need to give us a call, it's 254-605-4140, 254-605-4140. And we love questions about the show. We get emails all the time. So if you don't call and want to email me, you do that at benton@watson.legal. That's benton@watson.legal. Make sure you leave your phone number so I can call you back and talk to you about the facts personally.
And thank you, Company Dodd Cribs Law Firm. Thank you, Rick, for sponsoring this.
Yeah, Rick, bring me some judgments to go get, man.
And Joel, let's commercials till about 11:01, and then we get the chief on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you on the other side.